Part 2, Chapter 1, Pain. Since that bout of severe nonsense, whether it was Zhang Xiaofan's originally robust body or the consolation of Bai Yao that took effect, the high fever that had been indentation in the mouth character below, which was significantly different from the other characters. She immediately realized something and compared it with Shen gradually turned grim as he examined the wall around. It seemed this mechanism was merely set up by Lady Jinling to conceal the inscriptions and didn't lead to an exit. He felt extremely disheartened. Bai Yao, however, focused on the inscriptions on the wall. What Lady Jinling left behind, hidden so crucially, must not be ordinary. After a long time, her expression fluctuated, showing both admiration and sorrow. She murmured, "So this is the infatuation curse." Impatiently, Zhang Xiaofan came over and glanced at it. The first few sentences were, "Within the 9 nether yin spirits, among the gods and demons of all realms, with my flesh and blood offered as sacrifice for 3 lifetimes and 7 eternities, eternally falling into the realm of Yummer, only for the sake of love, even in death, no regrets." At a glance, he recognized it as a vicious curse from the demonic path. Despite Bai Yao's apparent joy, he couldn't help but snort, saying, "Does this indicate a way out?" Bai Yao was momentarily stunned and replied, "No." Zhang Xiaofan said indifferently, "Then what's the use of learning it?" Bai Yao fell silent for a moment before saying, "You don't know the origin of this infatuation curse? This curse has been passed down in our holy sect since ancient times, but it is said that no one has ever been willing to use it." Curious, Zhang Xiaofan asked, "Why?" Bai Yao sighed and said, "Legend has it that this curse was comprehended by a wise female ancestor from the heavenly book back then, but it can only be practiced by women. It is said to be a curse formed from a woman's essence and blood, possessing unparalleled power." Before she could finish, Zhang Xiaofan interrupted with a disdainful look in his eyes, saying, "Then call it blood curse instead of infatuation curse. It's just demonic nonsense, pretending to be elegant." Bai Yao's expression changed, but then she hesitated for a moment and whispered, "You're right. Even Lady Jinling, in the end, wasn't able to make use of it, right?" Zhang Xiaofan didn't respond. The two spent several days here. During his leisure time, Zhang Xiaofan went to look at the heavenly book, while Bai Yao often stared at the inscriptions on the wall, which she referred to as the infatuation curse. In the first volume of the heavenly book, there were actually no practical cultivation methods, just intricate text, which could be considered as a summary. However, Zhang Xiaofan had learned the true methods of both Buddhism and Taoism, so he could understand the text, albeit only to a certain extent. Regarding the realm described in the heavenly book, where Buddhism and Taoism merged into one, Zhang Xiaofan still couldn't grasp its meaning. Did it mean he had to simultaneously integrate and practice the Taiji profound pure Tao and the great Brahma Prajna true methods? Although he knew the hope of survival was slim, there was still some allure in his mind. Zhang Xiaofan quickly attempted to cultivate according to the directions in the heavenly book, but using both true methods at the same time was no easy task. Within moments, he felt his chi and blood surging, and he had to stop in despair. For several days, there was no progress at all. What followed was a bigger problem looming before the two. There was no food left. Although cultivators could traverse heaven and earth, they were ultimately flesh and blood beings. The legendary skill of abstaining from grains and not eating, practiced by advanced predecessors, was unheard of. Since entering this cave, Zhang Xiaofan's provisions had been lost. Although there was still water to drink, courtesy of the cave, the dry rations were only brought by Bai Yao, and they were not enough. Even though the two were trying to conserve, they quickly ran out. Without knowing how long they had been in the cave, probably no more than a couple of days, Zhang Xiaofan and Bai Yao stared blankly at their empty food bag. Bai Yao sat on the platform beside a pile of dry bones, yet she didn't feel any discomfort, showing that women from the demonic sect were indeed somewhat different from ordinary people. But now, she wore a worried expression. Zhang Xiaofan's illness improved quickly, his fever subsided, and apart from feeling a bit weak, he was mostly fine. When he heard Bai Yao sigh, he turned his head to look at the woman from the demonic sect. In his eyes, the woman in the aqua dress sat on the edge of the platform, her feet dangling in the air, swinging back and forth. Her Huan bell around her waist jingled softly. If it weren't for their current circumstances and knowing her identity, Zhang Xiaofan would almost think she was still an innocent girl. However, compared to their first meeting, Bai Yao looked much more haggard. Although she was still beautiful after daily grooming at the small waterfall, she appeared noticeably thinner these days. Thinking of this, a thought crossed Zhang Xiaofan's mind. Since he was young, his masters and senior brothers had taught him that people in the demonic path were all selfish and ruthless. But now, trapped in this desperate situation in the cave, why would this woman from the demonic sect share the little food they had left with him? Lost in thought, Zhang Xiaofan didn't notice Bai Yao looking at him. Seeing him staring blankly at her, she suddenly blushed and scolded. "What are you looking at?" Startled, Zhang Xiaofan quickly turned his head, stammering, and nothing. Behind him, Bai Yao didn't scold him as expected. After a while, she sighed and said, "We're trapped in this cave. Near death, there's no need for you to be so restrained."